The hidden truth. The fluorescent lights flickered in the underground bunker's main corridor, casting dancing shadows across the worn metal walls. Cade stood before the reinforced door of Chamber 7, his hand hovering over the biometric scanner. 7 years of hiding had led to this moment, though he couldn't have known it then. The weight of his father's old pocket watch pressed against his chest, a reminder of everything they'd lost when the visitors first arrived. "Are you sure about this?" Valeria's voice cut through the silence, her battle-hardened features softened by the artificial light. As the leader of the resistance, she rarely showed uncertainty, but there was something different in her eyes today. Cade nodded, pressing his palm against the scanner. The message was clear. "They want to talk, just talk." The words felt strange in his mouth. After 7 years of running, of fighting, of losing everyone he loved, the idea of simply talking with them seemed almost absurd. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a chamber that looked nothing like what they'd expected. Instead of the stark, military-style interrogation room they'd anticipated, they found themselves stepping into what appeared to be a perfect recreation of a pre-war conference room. The wood-paneled walls, the plush chairs, even the slight scent of coffee in the air, it was as if they'd stepped back in time. 3 beings waited for them inside. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, their silvery skin seeming to shimmer under the warm lighting. The machines integrated into their bodies pulsed with a soft, blue glow that somehow felt more comforting than threatening. The central figure, distinguished by its swirling golden eyes, gestured to the chairs. "We have been waiting," the thought appeared in Cade's mind, gentle but clear. "Please, be seated." Valeria's hand instinctively moved to her weapon, but Cade placed a restraining hand on her arm. "We're here to listen," he reminded her softly. As they sat down, Cade couldn't help but study the beings before them. How different they looked now, in this controlled environment, compared to the terrifying figures that had haunted humanity's nightmares for the past 7 years. Their elongated limbs moved with a grace that seemed almost dance-like, and their large, dark eyes held an intelligence that went beyond mere cognitive capability. The golden-eyed being, whom Cade would later know as Arxis, placed a small device in the center of the table. It hummed to life, projecting a holographic image of Earth as it had appeared before the visitors arrived. The image slowly transformed, showing the progression of environmental degradation, resource depletion, and conflict that had characterized the decades leading up to first contact. "We've seen this before," Valeria said, her voice tight. "The world wasn't perfect, but it was ours." Was it? The question resonated in both their minds. Or was it merely a resource to be consumed? The hologram shifted again, showing scenes that made both humans flinch. Massive oil spills poisoning oceans, forests burning to make way for industrial complexes, mountains being hollowed out for their mineral wealth. But there was something different about these images, they showed angles and details that had never been captured by human cameras. "You were watching us," Cade realized, his voice barely a whisper. "For how long?" "Centuries," came the response. "We watched as you developed technology capable of reaching the stars. We watched as you instead turned that technology toward destruction. We watched as you pushed your world to the brink of collapse." The hologram changed again, showing the moment of first contact. But this time, Cade saw it from the visitor's perspective. He saw their ships descending not with weapons primed, but with technology designed to heal the environment. He saw their attempts at communication being met with missiles and nuclear weapons. He saw their defensive measures being interpreted as attacks. "No," Valeria shook her head, rising from her chair. This can't be right. You killed millions." "We killed no one," the thought came with a wave of sadness so profound it brought tears to Cade's eyes. "Your weapons, your panic, your fear, these caused the deaths. We only sought to prevent them." The truth hit Cade like a physical blow. Every story they'd told themselves, every justification for their resistance, every tale of alien aggression, all of it began to unravel. The visitors hadn't come to conquer Earth. They'd come to save it from humanity. But the attacks on our cities, Cade pressed, desperately seeking some flaw in this new narrative. The destruction of our infrastructure. In response, the hologram showed a new series of images. What they'd interpreted as attacks were actually attempts to shut down the most polluting facilities. The destruction of infrastructure had been the dismantling of systems that were poisoning the planet. Even the mysterious phenomena that had driven them underground, the strange atmospheric changes, the electromagnetic pulses, had been part of a massive effort to heal Earth's damaged ecosystems. Why? Cade asked, his voice breaking. Why not just tell us? We tried, the golden-eyed being stepped forward. Many times, in many ways. But humanity was not ready to hear. You saw only what your fear allowed you to see. The room fell silent as the implications of this revelation began to sink in. 7 years of resistance, of fighting, of dying, all based on a fundamental misunderstanding. They hadn't been fighting for survival against an alien threat. They'd been fighting against their own salvation. Valeria slumped back into her chair, her face ashen. How many, she whispered. How many died because we wouldn't listen? The hologram changed one final time, showing the current state of Earth's surface. To their surprise, it was not the wasteland they'd imagined. While many urban areas lay in ruins, the natural world was beginning to heal. Forests were regrowing, oceans were becoming clearer, and the air was cleaner than it had been in centuries. It is not too late, the thought came gently. But the choice must be yours. Will you continue to hide in the darkness, fighting against a threat that never existed? Or will you step into the light and help us heal your world? Before either human could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed red, and the distant sound of explosions echoed through the corridors. Valeria's communicator crackled to life with panicked voices reporting multiple breaches in the facility's defenses. The golden-eyed being turned its gaze to the ceiling, its expression unreadable. It seems, the thought came with a note of sadness, that not everyone is ready for the truth. Cade exchanged a look with Valeria, both of them knowing that this was just the beginning. The real challenge wouldn't be accepting the truth, it would be convincing others to accept it as well. As the sounds of chaos grew closer, they realized that their role had changed in an instant. They were no longer resistance fighters struggling against an alien invasion. They were now ambassadors for a truth that could either save humanity or tear it apart, echoes of the past. The emergency lighting bathed the corridors in crimson as Cade and Valeria raced through the underground facility, the sound of combat growing closer with each passing moment. Behind them, their alien hosts moved with an otherworldly grace, their integrated machinery humming in harmony with the chaos around them. Marcus, Valeria spoke into her communicator, her voice steady despite their pace. Status report. The response came through bursts of static. General, multiple breaches. Western Coalition forces, they know about the meeting. Cade's mind raced. The Western Coalition, the most militant faction of the remaining human resistance, had always opposed any attempt at diplomacy with the visitors. But how had they discovered this secret meeting? The golden-eyed being, Arxis, suddenly stopped, its head tilting slightly. They approach from multiple directions. We must show you something before they arrive. We don't have time, Valeria protested, but Arxis had already placed its hand against a seemingly solid wall. A hidden door materialized, sliding open to reveal a chamber that shouldn't have existed according to any facility blueprints. Time, the thought came with a hint of what might have been amusement, is something we understand better than you might think. They hurried inside, and Cade's breath caught in his throat. The chamber was filled with artifacts from human history, not museum pieces, but objects that seemed to have been collected over centuries. Stone tools lay beside medieval manuscripts, modern technology alongside ancient pottery. You really have been watching us, Cade whispered, understanding dawning in his eyes. All this time. We have walked among you since your first ancestors looked up at the stars, Arxis confirmed. Guiding, suggesting, hoping to prevent what we had seen happen to countless other worlds. The being approached a central pedestal where a familiar object rested, a pocket watch identical to the one Cade carried. His hand instinctively went to his chest, feeling the weight of his father's watch still there. How, he began, but Arxis was already projecting images into their minds. Cade saw his father, younger than he'd ever known him, meeting with one of the visitors disguised in human form. He saw his father accepting the watch, saw him understanding the truth about humanity's path toward destruction. My father knew, Cade's voice cracked. He was trying to help you. Many humans throughout history have known, Arxis confirmed. Some accepted the truth and worked to change humanity's course. Others. The thought trailed off as another explosion rocked the facility. Valeria, who had been examining a wall of historical documents, suddenly called out. Cade, look at this. She pointed to a series of photographs showing key moments in human history, moments where disaster had been narrowly averted, where peace had prevailed against all odds, where environmental catastrophes had somehow been mitigated. You were there, she breathed. At every turning point. We tried to help humanity help itself, the thought came with a wave of melancholy. But we could not prevent all disasters, all wars, all destruction. We were bound by laws older than your solar system, laws that prevented direct intervention except in cases of planetary-scale catastrophe. Like now, Cade realized. That's why you finally revealed yourselves. We'd reached the point of no return. Before Arxis could respond, the chamber's hidden door burst open. Marcus, Valeria's second-in-command, stumbled in, blood streaming from a wound in his shoulder. They're here, he gasped. The Coalition, they're using the old weapons. The ones we salvaged from before. Valeria's face paled. The pre-visitor weapons, nuclear devices that had been hidden away in bunkers around the world. Weapons that could destroy everything, including any chance of saving their planet. We cannot stop them directly, Arxis communicated, its golden eyes dimming slightly. The choice must come from humanity itself. Cade looked at the pocket watch on the pedestal, then at the one he carried, a symbol of hope passed down without him even knowing its significance. He thought of his father, of all the others throughout history who had known the truth and tried to make a difference. Show them, he said suddenly, turning to Arxis. Show them what you showed us. The truth about our history, about what we've done to our world. They won't listen, Marcus warned, pressing a hand against his wound. The Coalition leaders are convinced this is all an alien trick. They'd rather see the world burn than admit they were wrong. We cannot project to unwilling minds, Arxis explained. The truth we showed you was accepted because you were ready to see it. Valeria had been quiet, studying the historical documents with intense concentration. Then we make them ready, she said finally. Not with weapons, not with force, but with something they can't ignore, their own history. She turned to Arxis. These artifacts, these records, they prove that humanity has always had a choice. That we've chosen the wrong path time and time again, but also that we've occasionally chosen right. That we've been capable of change all along. Another explosion rocked the chamber, closer this time. The sounds of fighting had reached their level. We need to broadcast this, Cade said, understanding Valeria's plan. Not just to the Coalition forces, but to everyone. Every surviving human needs to see what we've seen. Such an action would violate our protocols, Arxis communicated, but there was a hint of something else in the thought, hope, perhaps, or anticipation. Your protocols prevented direct intervention, Valeria argued. But if we do it, if humans choose to reveal the truth to other humans. The chamber's lights flickered as another explosion hit even closer. They could hear voices in the corridor outside, Coalition forces coordinating their attack. Arxis turned to its companions, their machines pulsing in what seemed to be a silent conversation. Finally, the golden-eyed being turned back to the humans. The chamber's systems are capable of broadcasting to all remaining human settlements, the thought came with a sense of urgency. But the process will take time, and once begun, cannot be stopped. If the coalition forces break through before the broadcast is complete, then we hold them off, Valeria said simply, drawing her weapon. She turned to Marcus. Get to the security center. Lock down every approach except the main corridor. We'll funnel them through there. General, Marcus protested, there are hundreds of them. And only one truth, she replied, checking her ammunition. Sometimes that's enough. Cade stepped forward, his father's watch warm against his chest. I'll help start the broadcast. I know what they need to see first. The chamber erupted into activity. While Arxis and its companions began interfacing with the chamber's systems, Valeria and Marcus moved to secure their position. Cade worked with the visitors, selecting artifacts and images that would tell humanity's true story, not just of their mistakes, but of their potential for change. As the first shots echoed in the corridor outside, Cade looked at his father's watch one last time before placing it beside its twin on the pedestal. 7 years ago, humanity had hidden from the truth. Now, finally, the truth would find them. Whether they were ready for it or not. The awakening. The first shots ricocheted off the reinforced doorframe, sending sparks cascading through the crimson-lit corridor. Valeria crouched behind a makeshift barricade, her mind racing through combat scenarios while trying to process everything she'd learned. Behind her, the soft hum of alien technology filled the chamber as Cade and the visitors prepared the broadcast that could change everything. Save your ammunition, she commanded the small group of loyal soldiers who joined their defense. Wait until you see their shadows. The whole situation felt surreal. For 7 years, she'd led the resistance against what she'd thought was an alien invasion. Now she was fighting alongside those same aliens, defending them against her own species. The irony wasn't lost on her. Inside the chamber, Cade worked frantically with Arxis, selecting and arranging the evidence that would be broadcast to every surviving human settlement. Each artifact told part of humanity's story, not the sanitized version they'd written in their history books, but the real story, complete with the subtle guidance of their alien watchers. The broadcast requires a human consciousness to direct it, Arxis communicated. The truth must come from one of your own. Cade nodded, understanding what wasn't being said. You want me to connect with the broadcast system? To share what I've seen? What you've learned, what you've felt, what you've understood, Arxis confirmed. Your mind will guide the truth to others. Before Cade could respond, a massive explosion rocked the facility. The lights flickered, and for a moment, the chamber's advanced technology seemed to waver. They're using plasma charges. Marcus called out from his position. Coalition must have adapted some of the salvaged visitor tech. Valeria's expression hardened. The Western Coalition had always been the most aggressive in studying and repurposing alien technology, often with devastating results. How long until the broadcast is ready? Minutes, came Arxis's response. But there is something you should know. The connection, it will change him. Cade met Valeria's concerned gaze. Whatever it takes, he said firmly. We've been changed by lies for long enough. Maybe it's time to be changed by the truth. Another explosion hit, closer this time. Through the smoke, they could hear the coalition forces advancing. Their weapons were a terrible mixture of human and adapted alien technology, all the destructive power of both species with none of the wisdom to temper it. As Arxis and its companions prepared Cade for the connection, strange memories began flooding his mind. He saw his father again, but differently now, saw him as one of many throughout history who had worked with the visitors in secret. He saw the weight of knowledge his father had carried, the burden of truth in a world committed to lies. They're breaching the outer defenses, someone shouted from the corridor. Valeria made a quick decision. Fall back to the chamber entrance. We hold them there, no matter what. As her soldiers repositioned, she spared a glance at Cade. He sat in what looked like a modified version of the visitors' technology, their machinery adapting to interface with human consciousness. His father's watch lay on the pedestal beside him, both timepieces now pulsing with an inner light that matched the alien's own technology. "It begins," Arxis announced, and the chamber filled with a soft, golden light. Cade felt the connection establish itself, like a door opening in his mind. Suddenly he could sense them all, every surviving human settlement, every underground bunker, every hidden community. He could feel their fear, their anger, their desperate clinging to comforting lies. And then he began to share the truth. The first images went out, ancient cave paintings showing early humans meeting with disguised visitors, their presence recorded in art but forgotten by history. He shared the feeling of discovery, of understanding that humanity had never been alone. The coalition forces hit the chamber's outer door with another plasma charge. The barrier held, but barely. More images flowed through Cade's consciousness. Medieval manuscripts showing visitors helping humanity survive plagues and disasters. Photographs of them standing in the background during humanity's greatest achievements and most terrible failures. Records of their attempts to guide humanity toward a better path, and humanity's consistent choice to turn away. "They're cutting through," Marcus warned. Valeria positioned her remaining forces for what could be their final stand. "Whatever happens," she called out, "the truth reaches everyone. That's all that matters now." Through the broadcast, Cade could feel the first ripples of response. Confusion, denial, anger, but also, in some minds, the beginning of understanding. He pushed deeper, sharing not just the images and records, but the emotions, the realizations, the profound shift in perspective he'd experienced. The chamber's door began to glow red as the coalition's weapons worked to breach it. "They fight against their own salvation," Arxis observed sadly. "As they have always done." "Not always," Cade managed to say through the connection. "Show them the other side. Show them when we chose right." The broadcast shifted, revealing moments throughout history when humanity had stepped back from the brink. Times when they'd chosen peace over war, preservation over destruction, wisdom over fear. Small moments that had made huge differences, often guided by the subtle influence of their alien watchers. The door's hinges began to melt. "Cade," Valeria called out, her weapon trained on the failing barrier. "Whatever you're going to do it now." Through the connection, Cade could feel the resistance weakening in some minds, the truth beginning to take hold. But in others, the denial grew stronger, more violent. The coalition forces outside were practically radiating hatred and fear. And then he understood what he had to do. "I need to show them everything," he gasped. "Not just the past, but the future. Both futures, the one we're heading toward, and the one we could still achieve." "Such a vision could break an unprepared mind," Arxis warned. "We're already broken," Cade replied. "Maybe we need to break completely before we can rebuild." The chamber's door exploded inward, and chaos erupted. Coalition forces poured through the breach, their weapons blazing with both human and alien technology. Valeria and her soldiers returned fire, creating a desperate defensive line, but Cade was already sending the vision, the full truth of humanity's potential future. The complete planetary death they were racing toward, the extinction they were choosing with every passing day. And alongside it, the alternative, the world as it could be, healed and transformed, humanity finally taking its place among the stars not as conquerors, but as partners. The impact was immediate and devastating. Throughout the facility, throughout every human settlement still surviving, people fell to their knees as the dual visions crashed through their consciousness. Some screamed. Some wept. Some simply stood in shocked silence. In the chamber's doorway, the coalition forces stumbled, their weapons dropping from nerveless fingers as the truth hit them with physical force. The future they'd been fighting for, and the future they'd been fighting against, both laid bare in their minds. Cade felt himself slipping deeper into the connection, his consciousness expanding beyond anything he'd thought possible. Through his awareness flowed humanity's entire story, past, present, and possible futures, all converging in this crucial moment. And somewhere in that flow of truth, a choice was being made. Not by any one person, but by humanity itself. The only question was, would they survive what they chose? Breaking the illusion. The silence that followed the broadcast was deafening. Throughout the chamber, humans and visitors alike stood frozen, caught in the aftermath of the massive psychic event. Coalition soldiers remained where they had fallen, their weapons scattered across the floor, their minds struggling to process what they'd experienced. Valeria's defenders looked equally shaken, their faces wet with tears they hadn't realized they'd shed. Cade slumped in the broadcast chair, his consciousness slowly retreating from the vast network it had touched. Every nerve in his body felt raw, oversaturated with the emotions and memories of countless others. He could still feel echoes of the connection, millions of minds reeling from the truth, each processing it in their own way. The connection must be severed, Arxis communicated, its golden eyes dimmed with concern. No human mind was meant to bear this burden for long. Wait, Cade gasped, clinging to the fading threads of connection. I can still feel them. I can feel what's happening out there. And he could. Across the scattered remnants of human civilization, the impact of the broadcast was manifesting in waves. In some settlements, people emerged from their bunkers for the first time in years, looking up at the sky with new understanding. In others, chaos erupted as long-held beliefs crumbled in the face of undeniable truth. General. Marcus called out, monitoring the facility's communications. We're getting reports from all sectors. The Western Coalition leadership, they're dead. Valeria approached him quickly. Dead? How? Self-inflicted, Marcus reported grimly. When the truth hit, when they saw what they'd really been fighting for, some minds couldn't handle the cognitive dissonance. A wave of nausea swept through Cade as he felt the ripples of those deaths in the fading connection. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him. Had he pushed too hard? Shown too much? You showed what was necessary, Arxis assured him, sensing his distress. The truth is neutral. How minds choose to handle it reflects their own nature, not yours. The chamber's systems began powering down as the broadcast's effects stabilized. Coalition soldiers were starting to stir, many of them looking around in confusion, as if waking from a long dream. Some began to weep, while others simply sat in stunned silence. One of them, a young woman with sergeant's stripes, slowly approached Valeria. Her hands were empty, raised to show she meant no harm. General, she said, her voice hoarse. What do we do now? It was the question everyone was asking, Cade realized. Throughout the connection, he could feel it echoing in millions of minds. What do we do with this truth? How do we move forward after everything we believed has been shown to be wrong? Valeria studied the sergeant for a long moment before responding. We do what humanity should have done 7 years ago, she said finally. We listen. As if on cue, Arxis and the other visitors began moving through the chamber, their integrated machinery humming with renewed purpose. The golden-eyed being approached the center of the room, where the 2 pocket watches still pulsed with inner light. The time of hiding is over, Arxis communicated to all present. For both our peoples, the chamber's walls suddenly became transparent, revealing that they were surrounded by hundreds of visitors, all their machinery glowing in synchronization. But instead of inspiring fear, the sight now brought a strange sense of comfort to the humans present. There are so many, the coalition sergeant whispered. We have always been here, Arxis confirmed. Waiting, watching, hoping that humanity would choose wisdom over fear. Cade managed to stand, though his legs felt weak. But we didn't, he said. Not until you forced us to see the truth. We did not force, Arxis corrected gently. You chose to share the truth. Your mind, your understanding, your courage to face what humanity has done and could become. We merely provided the means. The facility's communication systems suddenly crackled to life with incoming messages from around the world. Reports were pouring in from every surviving human settlement. The pattern was similar everywhere: initial chaos followed by a stunned awakening. The truth had shattered centuries of human illusions, but in that shattering, something new was emerging. "Some are already asking to meet with the visitors," Marcus reported, monitoring the feeds. "Others, they're starting to work together, sharing resources instead of fighting over them. It's like they finally understand we're all in this together." But not everyone was responding positively. Through his fading connection, Cade could feel pockets of resistance, minds that refused to accept what they'd seen, people retreating deeper into their bunkers, clutching their weapons and their fear like shields against reality. "There will be holdouts," Valeria observed, seeing the concern on Cade's face. "There always are. But they're no longer the majority. They can't stop what's coming. What comes next will not be easy," Arxis warned. "Knowing the truth is only the first step. Acting upon it requires more courage still." The chamber hummed with new energy as more visitors revealed themselves, their technology beginning to interface with the facility's systems. Screens came to life showing the state of Earth's environment, the damage done, but also the potential for healing. "How long?" Cade asked, understanding what he was seeing. "How long to repair what we've done?" "With your cooperation, decades," Arxis replied. "Without it, centuries. The choice, as always, remains with humanity." The coalition sergeant had been examining the environmental displays with growing horror. "All this time," she murmured, "we thought we were fighting for Earth's survival. But we were fighting against it. Then we stopped fighting," Valeria declared, her voice carrying through the chamber. "And we start rebuilding." Around them, both humans and visitors began to move with new purpose. The division between former enemies dissolved as coalition soldiers and resistance fighters worked together to tend to the wounded and establish new communications channels. The visitors moved among them, finally able to share their knowledge openly, but Cade, still sensitive from the broadcast connection, could feel the tremors of change rippling outward. What had happened here, in this underground chamber, was just the beginning. The real test would come in the days and weeks ahead, as humanity grappled with its new reality. He picked up his father's watch from the pedestal, its inner light now faded but still present. In its reflection, he caught a glimpse of possible futures, paths branching out from this moment, some leading to redemption, others to deeper darkness. The choice, as Arxis had said, remained with humanity. And they were about to make it. Redemption's dawn. 3 months after the broadcast that changed everything, Cade stood at the entrance of the underground facility, watching the sun rise over a transformed landscape. The morning light revealed signs of both destruction and renewal, crumbling remnants of the old world alongside the first green shoots of vegetation breaking through soil that had been dead for years. He wasn't alone. Beside him, Valeria studied a holographic display projected from a piece of integrated visitor technology she now wore on her wrist. The device showed real-time data about the ongoing global restoration efforts. Around them, humans and visitors worked together, their once separate technologies now combining in ways that would have seemed impossible just months ago. "The Australian sanctuary is online," Valeria reported, her voice carrying a note of quiet triumph. "That's the 5th one this week." The sanctuaries were a new kind of human settlement, built with visitor technology but shaped by human needs. They served as centers for both ecological restoration and cultural transformation, places where the two species could work together openly. "The pace of adaptation exceeds our projections," Arxis communicated as it approached them. The golden-eyed being's machinery now pulsed in perfect synchronization with the human-made technology around it. "Though challenges remain." Cade nodded, absently touching his father's watch, which now served as an interface between human and visitor systems. The broadcast had changed everything, but change brought its own complications. "The holdouts in the northern bunker complex are still refusing contact," he said. And we lost 2 restoration teams in the Amazon last week, old automated defense systems no one knew were there. But these were minor setbacks compared to what they'd achieved. In the months since the truth had been revealed, humanity had begun the long process of redemption. It wasn't easy, generations of fear and destructive habits couldn't be undone overnight, but the progress was undeniable. The sound of aircraft overhead drew their attention. A joint human visitor transport descended nearby, its hybrid technology allowing it to operate without the environmental impact of older human vehicles. As it landed, a familiar face emerged, the coalition sergeant who had surrendered in the chamber that fateful day. Sergeant Chen, Valeria greeted her. "How was Europe?" "Better than expected," Chen replied, her former military bearing now softened by purpose rather than discipline. "The Mediterranean recovery project is ahead of schedule. The visitors' oceanic purification systems are working better than we could have hoped." She handed Cade a small data crystal, its surface etched with both human and visitor script. "But we found something you need to see." Inside the facility's main chamber, now transformed into a joint command center, they reviewed the crystal's contents. The holographic display showed a vast underground complex, far larger and more sophisticated than any known human bunker. "We found it beneath the Alps," Chen explained. "It's old, probably built during the first days of contact. But it's not one of ours." "No," Arxis confirmed, its golden eyes dimming slightly. "It was built by those who came before us." The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the chamber. "There were others?" Valeria asked. "Other visitors?" "There have been many," Arxis communicated. "Not all chose to help as we did. Some observed only. Others interfered in ways that caused more harm than good." The hologram shifted, showing details of the complex's interior. Its technology was unlike anything they'd seen, neither human nor like the current visitors. "Is this a threat?" Chen asked, her hand unconsciously moving to where her weapon used to be. "Something we need to prepare for." "It is an opportunity," Arxis replied. "A chance to learn from the past, both yours and ours." Cade studied the hologram, understanding dawning in his mind. "This is why you really came, isn't it? Not just to save us from ourselves, but because you knew this was here. You knew humanity would eventually find it. The future is not a single path," Arxis communicated. "When we first arrived, we saw many possibilities. In most, humanity discovered this complex while still consumed by fear and aggression. The results were catastrophic. But now we know the truth," Valeria said. "About ourselves, about you, about our own history. And that changes everything." The chamber filled with more visitors and humans as word of the discovery spread. The two species no longer segregated themselves. Humans had begun adopting visitor technology while the visitors had started incorporating human innovations into their own systems. "What's in there?" Chen asked. "What did they leave behind?" "Knowledge," Arxis replied. "Technology. Warnings. And choices, always choices." Cade felt a familiar sensation, not as overwhelming as the broadcast connection had been, but similar. Through his father's watch and the integrated systems around them, he could sense the network of human and visitor consciousness working together. "We're ready," he said, surprising himself with his certainty. "Whatever's in there, whatever choices it presents, we can face it together." "There will be more challenges," Arxis warned. "More choices. More truths to face." "But we're not facing them alone," Cade replied, looking at his father's watch. He thought of all the humans throughout history who had known the truth, who had worked in secret to prepare humanity for this moment. We never were. The sun climbed higher in the sky, its light catching the new growth that was slowly reclaiming the scars of war and neglect. In orbit, the combined fleet of human and visitor ships maintained their vigil, no longer as adversaries but as partners in a shared future. Humanity had been given a second chance, not just at survival, but at becoming something greater than they had ever imagined. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges they could barely comprehend, but they would face it together. The truth had nearly broken them. But in breaking, they had found the strength to rebuild. And this time, they would build something worthy of the stars. The end.